We're talking about issues of innovation, technological innovation, and governance innovation. We're situating this in a sense from the place of Israel out into the region, Israel internally, Israel out into the region, and of course Israel and Jordan and the Palestinian Authority are in some cases working together to pursue technological innovation and governance innovation, cooperating and trying to really build the future together. So we have some questions for you, and I wonder if you then could take a few minutes to answer each of these questions. Subsequently, perhaps, we'll see if we have a moment for a question or two from the room. So our questions. The first is, how do you imagine the future of water governance as a factor of peace in the Middle East?
A major point of the regional water sectors in the Middle East is a poor governance. And this is mainly related to the set of political, economical, judicial, administrative systems that are controlling water management and resource development. And by having good governance by all parties, not for a particular party, to have a good governance, especially on the regional level, what I usually call regional water governance. By having good regional water governance, I think parties can move forward by building peace, building on a most important and critical issue, which is water and water needs. This region among the most dry regions in the world when it comes to water availability per capita. And history showed clearly that if there is anything that the parties would cooperate and put hand in hand is water. And this was a subject of a major MOU that I signed 2 days before Christmas with the Israelis and the Palestinians, witnessed by the World Bank and the State Department, to develop one major regional water project that will bring both water and peace to the people of this area.
So, on the question then, since you raised the issue of the Red Dead Sea Conveyance, I mean, how do you understand the peace dividend of the Red Sea Dead Sea Conveyance?
Look, as I said, this project is a very important project for all parties. And this is the first regional project endorsed by the trilateral parties, the three parties, the Jordanian, the Palestinians, and the Israelis. And this project was successful. I mean, the process towards implementation of this project were successful because of the urgent need for water. All parties need water. There's no question about it. And if this project fails, I can tell you we will have a very bad news for future regional projects in transport, in energy, tourism, whatever you would like to think of. So by having this project a successful one, I think we are opening the gate for major regional cooperation between the parties, between this troubled area, for the future of the generations of this area. Water is needed by all parties. And normal people, I'm talking about the majority of the people, were convinced that this project is needed because all of us will benefit out of it. And if it was not water, I can tell you we will have great resistance for the implementation of this project. Now it comes the role of the international community to help the parties, the Jordanians, the Israelis, and the Palestinians, to make it possible and to make it a very successful project for this matter as well as for future regional cooperation projects.
So on this matter, you're asking for the international community's support, and I suppose you said if we could have this project be a successful project, how would you define success then? And what are the obstacles that you see that need to be overcome, and how can the international community help you overcome those obstacles?
The success of this project means simply that we have water to deliver to the Jordanians, to the Israelis, and to the Palestinians. And if we don't reach this stage, we are not successful in this project. Obstacles facing this project, this is not an easy project because of political complications, because of the regional situation that we are living in. As you might know, the situation that's surrounding Jordan is a very critical situation. What's happening in Syria, what's happening in Iraq, what's happening in Egypt, what's happening in Palestine and Israel itself, and so on. And there is a need that support should come to this project. A major obstacle would be to find some grants to make this project affordable by the normal people in the three countries, because desalination is very expensive business, and in many cases beyond the affordability of the majority of the people. So we would like to have some grants to blend the private sector money, because we are planning to implement this project under a BOT scheme, build, operate, and transfer by the private sector. And if we leave it solely to the private sector, the water will be expensive. Since we are talking about an part of this project, the environmental component, to take the rejected brine and put it in the Dead Sea in an attempt to safeguard the Dead Sea, because we have severe environmental situation facing the Dead Sea as a result of the declination of the Dead Sea level itself. So we would like to have some grant money from donor countries so we can have affordable price for the water by all three countries.
And since we're on this topic of the Red Dead, and we've been talking very much today about desalination and other technologies, I have a question for you about desal and another about wastewater cooperation. So, I mean, do you think it's fair to say that desalination is a peace-promoting technology? And if so, how can we make it become one?
Of course, you know, the only way to get new and additional water resources for this region is by having desalination. We exhausted, we developed, we overpumped all our conventional water resources. The only new and additional resource that can make a difference is desalination. And desalination technology is very important in terms of affordability in one place, but also we have to use the competitive advantage of the three countries where we can have feasible desalination and maybe swap it with other resources and supply X or Y country with that water. So desalination is a key factor in building peace, because it's the only technology available that can make new water resources to the three countries under consideration.
And how about wastewater? Wastewater recycling and wastewater cooperation.
You know, wastewater is actually lacking behind water supply. Why is that? Because governments gave priority to water supply because of the reasons that I mentioned before. People, they don't have enough water to drink. So always we give priority in terms of infrastructure investment to water supply, rehabilitation of networks, desalination, rehabilitation of wells, building of dams, etc. And always wastewater and wastewater treatment comes at the end of the list because of the financial obstacles that we as Jordanians have in the first place. This is one thing. The other thing, that there is a lot of work to be done at the regional level in terms of the effluent standards to be left flowing to the rivers and water courses. We have to agree on some regional standard that will allow countries to treat wastewater and leave it or flow it to the water courses. Of course, there are issues related to the treated wastewater and the reuse issues. Certain countries, they have restriction on that. Certain countries, they do not have restriction on that. And this is, again, an obstacle on agreeing on a regional platform for wastewater management and wastewater treatment.
So somewhere the building, in fact, of a regional platform is the way you envisage cooperation between the Israelis, Palestinians, and the Jordanians.
Yes, of course, because it has, first of all, for the environmental impact, for the public health, and also treated wastewater is a new and additional water resource. If we treat it to the level that we can use it for industry or for unrestricted agriculture, I think this is something that we can cooperate on.
Thank you. I think we perhaps have time for one question from within the room.
By the way, I don't see you anymore. I hope you're seeing me.
Good. Minister, salam alaikum. I was in Amman in 1995 on a U.S. Department of Agriculture team of cooperation between Jordan and Israel following the peace agreement. We were taken to the Jordan Valley, a very, very rich area, very, very moist. And we were looking at post-harvest losses. But are you using trickle irrigation in those houses now, in the greenhouses and so on? And has that increased your production there?
I'm not hearing you well, sorry. You're saying about greenhouses and?
In the Jordan Valley, where we went to look at post-harvest losses, and I'm wondering whether you're using trickle irrigation. Drip irrigation
Yes.
Can be either.
Yes. Yes, within the Jordan Valley, 99% of the land under irrigation in the Jordan Valley using drip irrigation, and we became more advanced in using micro drip irrigation. I mean, Jordan is next to Israel when it comes to irrigation efficiency. But again, back to the first question, I'm sure in the future there will be a new technology and new irrigational methods that can save more and more water that we also very much interested to adopt and to use.
We have Alon Sal who would like to ask you a question as well.
I just want to ask the question that was asked me earlier about your vision for restoring the Dead Sea. Surely a small step was made in Washington before Christmas, but it's still a very small step. What do you think might be the way forward so that this generation does not be the one that lets the Dead Sea die?
The MOU that we signed is the first phase of so many phases of bringing additional water to the Dead Sea to start gradually raising the level of the Dead Sea. That's why I said this project is so important for the regional parties in order to safeguard the Dead Sea. The studies that we have and the studies that we've done with the Israelis showed clearly that within the coming 40 years, if we don't bring additional water to the Dead Sea more or less will be like a small lake, actually will disappear with all the values attached to the Dead Sea, the religious values, the economical values, the archaeological values, the touristic values, the industrial values, etc. So I think there is only one way to bring additional water to the Dead Sea and also to use this mechanism or this project or this tool also to produce fresh water to the parties by having desalination plants near the Dead Sea or along the route from the Red Sea to the Dead Sea.
Mr. El-Naser, I hope you'll indulge us. One of our panelists, Clive Lipchin, would like to ask you a question as well.
Yes.
Minister, firstly, thanks so much for joining us. Thank you very much for joining us. Do you not have the camera? But I'd like to ask you, Minister, we read that there is now close to 1 million Syrian refugees in Jordan. Of course, this is a massive challenge with regards to how Jordan, as you've correctly said, and rightfully so, that Jordan is a very water-scarce country. how do you think, or what is Jordan doing to try to address not just the needs for water for Jordanians, but now, of course, this large influx of Syrian refugees in the north of Jordan? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. This is a very serious issue for Jordan, for all infrastructure services, but in particular, water and sanitation. And the 1,300,000 Syrians that we have now in Jordan really stress the already pressured water resources, especially in the northern governorates, where we have most of these people settled in refugee camps and in normal houses. This is a major, it has a major impact on Jordan. Let me just give you an example. This is like Canada moving to the United States. Can you imagine? Yes, exactly. The refugees represent about 20% of the total population. And these people, they came, none of them has 1 liter of water in his hand. And this is a scarce water country. People getting water in Jordan between 24 to 48 hours per week, that's it. And the rest of the week, they have to rely on what they store during the time where they get this little amount of water. So the Syrian refugees costing us, in terms of monetary terms, costing us a lot of money. We calculated the annual cost for Jordan, direct and indirect, because there is indirect cost like pollution to our groundwater resources, pollution to our soil, the overcapacity of the wastewater treatment plants became overloaded by far, about 350 million US dollar per year. And this is a lot of money for a country like Jordan. The other problem that coincides with the refugees is the severe drought that we have during this winter. What we have in terms of drought this winter, we did not see since we have the meteorological record since the year 1936. You in the United States enjoying all these cold fronts of snow, and we here enjoying badly a very severe drought conditions. Now we are about to, at the end of the winter season, and what we got, only 33% of our annual long-term average of rainfall, only 33% of the long-term average of rainfall. Our dams stored less water by an amount of 50 million cubic meter less than year same time. So the whole impact of the refugees, of the drought conditions in Jordan is less, our resources is less by 150 million cubic meter, which is equivalent to about 20% of our annual water budget. If you add the Syrian refugees to the drought conditions, then you imagine the situation. Maybe you don't want to be the water minister in a country like that.
Water Minister, we have Munzer Hind, who wants to ask a question. He's the director of the Palestinian Wastewater Engineers Group. And then we have one other question after that, and then we'll close the session.
Good evening, Your Excellency. One question regarding treated wastewater reuse. I know that Jordan is within the first Arab countries who adopted the reuse of treated wastewater in agriculture. My question is about the percentage of treated wastewater used in agriculture in Jordan. And what does the Jordanian government do for the promotion of use of treated wastewater in agriculture? Thank you.
I got the first part of your question. I did not get the second part of your question.
The second, what does the Jordanian government do with regard of promotion of use of treated wastewater in agriculture?
Yes, thank you very much. We use 95% of our treated wastewater. And we actually did a very advanced step in terms of reuse, because water is very precious in this part of the world. We are not only using it for agriculture, we started important projects to swap fresh water being used by the industries like the phosphate company by the treated wastewater. And also some of the industrial zones that we have in the north, also we swapped fresh water with treated wastewater, because you know the economic return per cubic meter within the industry is much higher than the agriculture. So we started giving priority in terms of reuse for the industries on the expense of the irrigated agriculture because of the value of water. And what the government is doing to promote the use of treated wastewater, we use actually tariff as a demand management tool. We sometimes price treated wastewater much lower than freshwater resources in order to encourage farmers to use treated wastewater, and the same for the industries. Instead, for example, paying $2 per cubic meter for fresh water, when we do a swap, we tell industries, now we will give it to you maybe $1.4 per cubic meter. So it will be win-win situation for the government and for the industry.
Thank you. So we had a snowstorm in the last day and a half or so, and it meant that we had a closed university yesterday. We started later today, and so had to adapt to constantly changing circumstances, the presence of many people. Some came, some couldn't come. And we are fortunate to have Dr. Eran Lerman, who's a Deputy National Security Advisor to the current government in Israel, who wanted to also share a few thoughts. And I wonder if you would stay on the line over the next couple of minutes. I am on the line,
but sorry, but I don't see you anymore. It seems that you shifted the camera to a more nicer place.
I'll see what I can do here. So maybe if we can, no, it's the camera doesn't seem to be on the technology. So, Dr. Lerman, here you go.
Saad Wazir, ahlan wa sahlan.
There we go.
Now I'm seeing you, yes.
Eran Lerman, I'm the Deputy to Yossi Cohen at the National Security Council in Israel. I am at a disadvantage here because I do not presume to be a water expert, but I very much appreciated your comments because they illustrate a point that I've been making for a very long time. In fact, when I was much younger, and still in the effort to prove that military intelligence is not necessarily a contradiction in terms, there was a whole body of literature that you may be familiar with, from, I will not mention names, but scholars in this town and elsewhere, arguing that the next war is going to be about water. Water will be the source of conflict. Water will be the bone of contention between nations. There was a whole industry of terrible water scenarios. And what happened is more or less the opposite. We have learned two things. First of all, that where you have trust and cooperation, water is actually a building block for peace rather than a cause of conflict. And I think it's not accidental that of all that was built in the early 90s in the multilateral negotiations that began in Moscow in the early months of 1992 and continued until they collapsed for various reasons in 95, the only remaining cooperative element is the MADRAC framework, which continued to function and has been sustained because, precisely as you said, ultimately everybody needs water and we need to cooperate. And the Israeli-Jordanian bilateral relationship in this respect, and I think I can say that I had a bit of my own efforts put into it in recent years, and now the trilateral initiatives, not only the conveyance, but also what's being done in the lower Jordan Valley, reclamation efforts. I think they are precisely the indication that cooperation can be, in water, is a tool of peace. But I also agree, as you said, that governance, quality of governance and the nature of the investment necessary, which very often can only be done by governments, is also a necessary part. To put it in whimsical language, I would say water is a kind of issue, a problem, that, if I may be flippant for a moment, is soluble in gold. Because if there's enough investment in infrastructure, you can solve the key questions of desalinization on one hand and reclamation on the other. Both are expensive technologies, but once you have access to energy, and nowadays Israel and Jordan will be, I hope, the beneficiaries of what the Eastern Mediterranean has to offer to all of us in terms of energy. Once you can link energy and water technologies, you can achieve a lot and rid yourself of this dependence on the whims of nature that we are experiencing in our part of the world right now. So I believe that this is another aspect, and I would recommend to some of our neighbors further afield, without going into specific countries, that the much greater effort into recycling and the reuse of water would go a long way towards solving problems which may yet arise. We are not yet in Dune, in Arrakis, those of you who read the novels, in terms of the percentages, but when you mention 95%, when the Israeli overall level of reuse it verges of 90% nationwide, I think we have a number of, I think 30% ahead of the next country, which I believe is Spain, then this is once again an indication that governments implement policies, including, by the way, pricing policies, because there would be no motivation for people to avoid waste if there's no if you don't find a sophisticated way to price while serving the needy. But all of this is said and done. Cooperation is the key, and I think what we've heard here confirms it. So thank you for what you said, and let's hope we continue to go forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I agree with you. I fully agree with you on all what you've said. And I just want to give you some information about a report that we did in cooperation with NGO from India. I don't know if you know the name, Foresight Group. Foresight Group did like a blue revolution for the region. One of the results of this report, which is very much interesting, showed that countries, not only in our region, the whole world, countries that have water cooperation, they don't run into wars. They don't run into wars. And at least this is the case between Jordan and Israel since 1994. Because we cooperate on water, we don't have any conflict since then, apart from the Palestinian issue, etc. But on the bilateral Jordanian Israelis, we don't have any conflict. The other thing what you are saying is, I think this is very important. And I can tell you today, for example, I had the Israeli Joint Water Committee, as per the peace treaty, we have a Joint Water Committee. I had 8 Israelis today in my offices. And the issue was, I asked them to send me some water beyond the agreement that we have, because I have drought conditions. They have excess water from the desalination plants. They can take the money and I can take the water, as simple as that. So this really would build peace between the countries. And you need to do it once, then the door will be open for other and major cooperation between the parties. I don't want to take much of your time, but on this, I wanted to say these few statements.
Minister El-Naser, thank you so very much. I think you're also, and all the people who have shared insight here and asked you questions are reminding us that if we're talking about peace, then we're not talking about always operating within the strict confines of agreements, but also with excess generosity, goodwill and vision. So thank you for your insights. Thank you all for your questions. Shukran. Salam alaikum. And we are now moving on to another continued discussion on transboundary